Hey, so I'm so excited that you're back for another Hope interview that I have in this series because if you're anything like me, you have some bad habits you want to get rid of and some good habits you want to establish. So, in this interview today, I'm going to be talking with somebody really special because she is going to be able to get us going with our habits, getting rid of the bad ones and adopting some good ones. So let me just go in and read her bio very quickly. Okay, she is a national certified life coach and master addiction specialist. Tricia Perito is on the front lines of making life better for those who desire. She currently serves as a founder and director of the Turning Leads Recovery, Life, and Wellness Coaching, a national certified coaching practice whose mission is to provide personalized, high quality care that will guide individuals toward an empower and improve quality of life and wellness. Such as Perito plays an integral role in the life of her clients as a coach, master addictions coach, addiction treatment counselor, intervention professional, and professional case management. After having successfully embraced recovery achievements of her own, she has tactfully combined her empathy and passion for social change with her admirable experience and credentials. This combination has equipped her to provide the quality service in a manner that motivates individuals to achieve their full potential, return to a level of functioning that will provide them with great self-worth and conquer the stigma and shame that generally arise when individuals seek recovery support. Thank you so much for being here, Tricia. I am so happy that you're here. How are you doing today?
I'm spectacular. Thank you so much for just your energy.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah,
I
definitely.
love it. It's like I couldn't start my day any better than just meeting somebody with just such a beautiful energy. It's amazing. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. No, thank you. Thank you for being here. And so, for my viewers, please tell us a little bit about your background story. I want to know how you became the master coach, the industry thought leader, and the addiction specialist.
Wow. Well, the longer the longer I've been quote unquote sober, the longer I realize that my recovery journey has been so much longer than the actual documented days, week, months, years, which it's been 8 since I've had any alcohol in my life. But if I look at it, it stems way back in life. So anyway, we'll fast forward back over to the end of it. I found myself in this place that was super unfamiliar to me. It was a physiological addiction. I, my history from the age of 4 on, shows me as somebody as a perfectionist, control needs, just all these underlying issues. And so when I didn't have any control left, I was like, well, wait a minute, this isn't cool. I'm not in control. So I started a recovery journey as far as with those chemicals. And then, like I said, I realized now it's been longer than that because over the years, I again had the perfectionism. I had I had just this need to succeed and excel, and I needed this external validation, and I was always just seeking to be seen. And then over time, with traumas and tragedies, etc., that I experienced, I started adding in these different things, right? Like at the age of 12, I discovered alcohol, and then I discovered eating disorders, anorexia, and restricting, and then body dysmorphia, and then my relationship with food waxed and waned into food addictions and different things like that. And then I started really getting involved in like this shopping habit. Like I just was seeking everything outside of me. So when it became something that I couldn't control, that I felt completely out of control, so that physiological, that was onset with the combination of a prescription med that exacerbated. everything and created the issues. So then so in my treatment journey, I, went to a program, got stabilized, and then I was really curious what happened. So I went to school. And in school, I studied everything. Behavioral, process, and chemical addiction was like a big, huge passion of mine. I started with the physiological effects, and then I dove into working in every single level aspect of addiction treatment. And then I started looking at the different modalities. I fell in love with coaching. And I just started really looking at my life and the people that were coming to me. They're like, I don't have an addiction, but I wonder if you can help me. I'm admiring everything that you're doing in your life and how just calm and collected and cool and polished and poised you are, like blah, 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 right? And I started to realize that I had gone through all of these steps and processes. So I married them to evidence-based practices, rewrote it all, created the building milestones, which is the trademarked and copywritten program that is my Live Free system. Anyway, that's how I got here. That's what's been my last 8-year life passion journey. I eat, sleep, and breathe it. And it's absolutely amazing. I have, I think 11 or 13 credentials that allow me to professionally be able to help people, because everybody looks different, right? And so we've uncovered this whole not so normal faces of addiction in the process, right? Because if you have a shopping addiction, you don't need to go check yourself into a 30, 40, 45, 90-day program. You need some discipline. You need to find out why it is you feel so much that if you buy the 10 items from the dollar rack at Target, like you feel like all your problems are going to melt away. You need to know why that gallon of ice cream is going to fill you up to the point of self-soothing. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah,
did I answer your question?
that's really good, because like as you were talking that last bit, I was just thinking how in the past, and I have helped myself get out of that, but for me it was spending money. It was shopping. I would get into this sense of feeling down, maybe even being a little depressed. And then I would go shop and it would make me feel better at the time. But then after the fact, it's like, why did I spend all that money? And it was like a cycle, because then I just felt even more horrible. So
It's the same cycle, right? As say an alcoholic. They go out, they binge, they think they're having fun until they're not. They get drunk, hammered, whatever. They do whatever they do, right? They're that guy dancing on the table or knocking over chairs. And then they get up the next morning, they have guilt, remorse, shame, yada, yada. I'm not going to do it again. Burn cycle again. Same with shopping. We go, we're feeling down. We're like, oh, okay, I need some retail therapy. We go out. We're like bright, shiny, bright, shiny, bright, shiny. We get home. We're like, how am I getting this in the house without anybody noticing? How am I going to justify these purchases? How am I going to hide them? And, whatever. Believe me, I mastered it. It was like, oh my gosh, let me hide it in the back of the closet, hang it on a hanger, wear it a couple times and hope nobody notices it was new, kind of thing. And you have that guilt, that remorse, that shame, that need to justify. So it's the same turmoil, just different level of, maybe physiological severity, right? Like you're not gonna ruin your liver shopping, but it causes issue.
So you're here because you're going to help us whatever habits we have that we want to get over, especially the ones that are holding us hostage, how to deal with them and get over them.
Sure, absolutely, 100%, because I am such a recovery lifestyle enthusiast, and I believe, like so many people out there, don't know where to go. Like they don't even, or they're just afraid to reach out and say, or anyway. we all can identify with anything that we've just said, right? And it doesn't matter. I even had a client that, and this is not a joke, right? Like addictions are tricky, sneaky things, but that felt the need to replenish the Oreos, right? So had a back stash of Oreos because the Oreos were her husband's cookies, right? Had this back stash of Oreos so that when she ate some, she could replenish them, right? And believe me, I had a period of time where I did that with my beer, like I don't want anybody, and so we, people know what that's like, where they don't want anybody to know. I have plenty of moms that hide the candy in the bottom of their purse, have some airline bottles of wine in their gym bag at the back of the closet, because they know, but they want to take the edge off. And today, what are we in? We're in a society where we're in something new. We're stuck at home. I have so many moms right now that, here's the deal, they're trying to juggle their career, or they've had to give up their career to stay home with their kids, and now we've got midday drinking. In fact, the percentage rates are well over 40% for heavy drinking in women since the onset of COVID. Over 40% increase in heavy drinking. That's not to even talk about the over 200% increase in online sales of alcohol, all the statistics, right? So if we look at that, we can put that across all different things. Who's baking more? Who's sitting on the couch eating more? Who's binge watching more? Who's all of these things, right? So, we want to look at those key factors of what we can achieve. So what I really work towards, and what my clients' outcomes ultimately are, is a dramatic improvement in their emotional intelligence. So that EQ, right? And the EQ is our ability, and if I look like I'm reading, it's because I don't want to mess something up, right? It's our ability to recognize, understand, and regulate our emotions, and to respond to those emotions in constructive ways that allow us to communicate, empathize with others, and overcome challenges. So in my program, our primary focus is impulse control, knowing the difference between impulse and knee jerk, right? Distress tolerance with appropriate self-soothing tactics, and emotion regulation. Like, that's the goal. These are the outcomes that we are getting day after day, month after month, year after year with everybody that's coming in. Now, I primarily work one-on-one with everybody. In fact, even when it's one of the other coaches, they all interact with me when it comes to learning their skill sets and tactics. So that's the outcome that we're looking for, right? That's the outcome that we can expect. And I'm going to give you those 10 steps. But if we look at specifically what we want to start looking at, is that external locus of control. I giving away my power. Somebody has that opportunity, that power to take away my positive outlook on the day. I don't care if it's somebody's tailgating you on the freeway, or your husband raised his voice at you, or the kids are throwing a fit not doing school. I don't care what it is. If that derails you and you become irritated, agitated, annoyed, frustrated, yada, 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 and you reach to something outside of you, you've given your power away to something outside of you to control and dictate how you think, feel, and believe in that moment. And you're giving your power away to your own personal control, right? So it's false hope. So what we need to do is move out of what I call that external drive and get into the internal. Now, in order to do that, we have to understand two different stances, and that's the stance of a judger.
So are these like the steps you're going into?
No, this is to get you ready to accept the steps.
Okay.
And
all right.
There's just a couple. So
okay.
You want to move out of the stance of a judger.
Okay. I'm writing this down.
Oh, okay. and into the stance of a learner, right? So we are such rigid beings that it's, the reason like our kids irritate us so much, or our spouse or the person on the freeway, right? Why they can derail us is because we're in that external locus of control, but it's because we're in the stance of a judger. You're not driving the way that I think is the right way to drive. You're not talking to me the way that I think is the right way to talk to me. You're not, right? Like we're judging, where we have this rigid whatever, instead of moving into the stance of a learner, which allows us to utilize the power of inquiry. Write that down. Power of inquiry. And
Got it.
And that's helped me understand. This is how we lead by true example. We have to talk to people and interact with people the way that we would want to be spoken to and interacted with, so that we can all see our environment the way that we want to see it. And that leads me to, how do I want to see me? Right? We all have to be, we all have to look at that and say, how do I want to see myself in my life? How do I want to see myself interacting with my environment? And how do I want my environment to see me? That's that. So the 10 steps look like this. Number 1, you must genuinely know yourself. And that means every piece that makes up your emotional, intellectual, physical, social, environmental, and spiritual being function. What does that internal dialogue look like? Sound like? Feel like? Is it uplifting your feelings of worthiness, validity, and value? Or are you going through life feeling like you are unheard, undervalued, and dismissed? Right? Where's that fear of change? All the things. Like I have a whole list of things that people generally show up that is their internal belief system or their internal dialogue. And it's a list about this long. But I would say 99.9% of people come in with at least 95% of those bullet points. Number 2, we have to adjust how we're functioning. Balance goes far deeper than between home, work, and let's say physical health, right? Most people focus on those 3 categories. I go, I have my work, and then I go home, and then I have my little physical health. Some people even add in that, mindfulness, practice of meditation or whatever. We dive into 8 primary categories with 6 subcategories. And those are those 6 categories from item number 1. So 14 categories to create a life balance. Then number 3, you absolutely must abandon your reactivity. It's critical. That's that knee-jerk, instantaneous system that we have embedded in our functioning. This is all on the worksheet that I sent to you, right? Oh. So you've got to abandon your reactivity.
Now, how do you do that if it's reactive? Because reactive to me sounds like, like when the doctor hits your knee and then it the reflex of your knee. So if it's a reflex, how do you how do you change that?
Well, okay, so this particular period, this particular module, because there's a total of 30 lessons, but this particular module is all on the art of pause, right? Cultivating the art of pause so that you can move into responsiveness versus reactiveness. So that's where you've got to know the difference between knee jerk, which is without thought, and impulsivity, right? And so, yeah, when you want your knee to bounce, because that means that your physical body is performing. So we have to know where our perspectives need to be narrowed and where they need to be broadened. And so it's work, right? But if, your kid does something and you just, shout at them, and that's knee jerk, like it's unthought out, just conditioned, right? So we all have this conditioned piece to us. So if we,
Right.
for me, I could look back in time and I could see where I could see 100% where my relationship with food got conditioned in different ways,
Mm.
right? What is it? You fall down, you scrape your knee, you get a popsicle. You achieve something. You get ice cream. I don't know. You get taken out to a big meal. It's your birthday. You get cake. Like it becomes this conditioned way. If somebody tells you you're thin, somebody like me is going to go, oh, I'm getting attention. And I feel like as a child growing up that I've been very unseen, very unheard. Suddenly I'm getting attention for being thin. I'm going to restrict some more at a young age, right? So we got to be really careful with our kids and how we talk and how we,
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
Or, looks like you put on a few. I'm going to restrict again, right? Like we have to really think about what's coming out of our mouth. And I think if the world did that a little bit more, things might go a little bit better. But anyway, so a lot of times people will sit in this particular module for a couple of weeks,
Oh,
right? Because
okay.
it takes some observing,
Yeah. And
just to get the concept. The next step to strengthen that responsiveness, you have to learn that what drive you operate from. So that's that external or the internal locus of control. And so you want to get in there and change that control system so that you can move into a more assertive stance. Because we don't want people not saying or doing what they want. We don't want people to feel restricted or punished or, guilty or selfish, but we want to be moving into a more appropriate functioning. Everybody's born in the external locus of control, which is my favorite theory. It's by Julian Rotter. Anyway, but as you're growing up, you need to be moving into that internal drive, and that's how we can, avoid the passive aggressive situation. So then, step number 5. So you want to be able to create a filtrating boundary system. Okay. Now, most people are like, I've got solid boundaries. I don't want your boundaries to be solid. I want your boundary system to be movable, bendable, pliable, flexible, filtrating. And I want you to be able to develop the 4 key ones that come to play. And I learned this from another clinician. But it's the internal, the external, the temporal, which is your emotional, and then your physical boundaries, right? We want to know what environment we're going to be in and how we need to get those engaged. And then to back those, we have healthy limits and limitations, which are for us, right? The filtration system is going to help you keep things out that you don't need to take on. So you're not carrying around baggage that doesn't belong to you, that are heavy, weigh you down, and it could be negative words of somebody else. Like, it lets you keep them out there, right? So we want to create a healthy boundary system backed by strong limits and limitations. That's number 5. Then you have to be 100% willing to be effective and do what works. And this means being mindful and willing to evaluate how you handle yourself. This is where we learn to hear through a different filter, see through a different lens, right? Because again, we get to choose how we hear the message. If somebody says to you, I can't believe you did that, April, right? Like, if it's in a text message, you can read that with any inflection you want, right? So let's learn to read it in the inflection that's going to serve us, not somebody else. Like, it's up to us how we receive things. So we can hear any way we want. It's how I've been able to change my relationships with a lot of people. And it's, oh, wow, I don't hear at that level.
yeah, that's good that you said that, because a lot of times, yeah, I mean, it's you get a text, you get an email, you get anything that's written where you can't hear somebody's voice fluctuating or their body language, and it's like, did they mean to say that? And it's like, okay, I have a choice here. I can take it that they're being combative, or if I read it this way, maybe, you know, they're not trying to be snarky or anything like that. And so, yeah, that is a choice that you can make. Yeah, that's a
This
good
is
point.
where that EQ really comes in, right?
Yeah.
Remember, I was talking about the power of inquiry, right?
Yes.
This is when you go, I'm going to pause. I'm going to look at this. How am I seeing it? If I'm really confused and I don't know if this person is just being fun, playful, sarcastic, or if they're being snarky, mean, and nasty, right? So this is when I go, I think you're being playful. However, or you can say, you know, I just want to make sure that you're not upset about something and I'm overlooking it, right? You're showing a little compassion, you're showing interest, right? Because we need to be more interested than interesting. Or we want to say, can you help me understand the the tone of this message? Right? Like, I want to make sure that I respond to you appropriately. I want to make sure that I give you what you need from me in this time and space. Help me understand, right? And that's, again, leading by example. It's that, how do I want to see myself? Do I want to see myself knee jerk, like, wow, go pound sand? Or, you know, or do I want to see myself as somebody that's like, I'm interested to know where you're going with this, or I want to know more about that. Bring me in a little bit more. Because this is how we begin to grow, change, morph into that learner, that person that can have, you know, this level of emotional intelligence that says, I know how I want to see myself. I know how I want to be seen by others. And I know how I want to experience my environment. And I'm going to make sure I take it there. And I'm going to take it there by utilizing the power of inquiry. And that's what's going to keep me out of irritation, frustration, agitation, anxiety inducing, uncertainty, you know, all the things that lead us to, oh, let me grab this quick fix. Nobody's listening to me. Nobody's hearing me. I feel dismissed. I feel undervalued, used, abused, whatever, right? Like, I'm so annoyed. I'm just going to go shopping. I'm going to eat. I'm going to whatever. I'm bored. I'm lonely. I'm tired. You know, give me something to fix me. Get interested. Right?
I love that. Yeah.
So that's number 6.
Yeah.
That was obviously, you know, like where for me is just so transformative and can be just life-changing. And then you want to be able to control your moments. Again, back to that distress.
Number 7 is control your moments. Okay.
Especially in times of distress. So this is where we get into effective self-soothing tactics. What does that look like? Right? That might look like, oh, I need to take a break from this conversation. I don't know how I feel about that. Can I go, you know, can we table? And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do some processing instead of continuing to do this back and forth where nobody's hearing the other one because they're so bent. I had to change my language there for a minute. We're so bent on being right that we're all digging our heels in, right? We're in that stance of a judger instead of open and in the stance of a learner. But, you know, so we want to be able to, or just even with COVID, right? We're in a time of distress. How are you handling it? Because if you're somebody that's drinking has increased, your heavy drinking has increased over 40%, like, come on, that's not effective self-soothing. Let's fix that. And the amount of time that's gone by, this is no longer, oh, I'm just going to do this while COVID's here. This is now a habit. This is now an addiction by all intent and purposes, diagnosably, right? Like, daily drinking over a certain level, women 1 glass, right? It literally becomes a diagnosable issue. And I don't like to do that. I don't like to give labels. I just like to, you know, fix the situation. Right. So we have to be willing to look at all the different categories of our life, right? There's home, there's work, there's social, there's environmental, right? Like all different things that we want to look at, and we want to make those categories. How am I going to soothe myself at work? Like, what's a good tactic for me to have? And you know, having those tactics of being able to get centered and grounded in any moment are super useful, right? Whether that's a stop sign visualization of 5, 5, and 5, or you know, some other thing that you can put yourself through cognitively, because we can't drop into a yoga pose in the middle of a workday. Maybe on your lunch break, but that's not going to help you while you're sitting in front of your boss on a Zoom. You can't go, oh, I'm getting irritated, let me go do downward dog. You got to have something you can do in here that's going to keep it from derailing. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's distress tolerance, right? That's the distress tolerance. And then number 8 is leave the pain behind and lead with a new lens. We have to learn to identify and describe our emotions. Sorry. If I say to you, April, how are you today? What's the standard response when you're at the store and somebody
fine. I'm good.
You used fine. That is my absolute favorite example. Fine is the most ambiguous answer you can give. Look up the definition of the word, and believe me, I have my peeps looking up the definitions to every adjective they use to describe themselves. Look at the true meaning of that. It is anything from a, you know, super fine breakable object, right? Like super fine hair, or super fine breakable to, you know, fine jewelry, right? Like, it is a broad word. It's not appropriate to use to describe yourself. It's not a good descriptor.
Good point. Good
because
point.
it's not definitive in nature. Right? So we have to look at how we're describing our emotions.
Yeah, that was a good point. Awesome. And then so what's step 9?
Step 9, and I'm sorry, I tend to go on, is this is where we learn how to shine. This is where we learn how to add, edit, delete. This is a very unique to me system that I have created in my journey, because I, you know, have sat through many self-help, all the things, right? All the therapies and all of this. And I was always trying to fit my life into the master of whatever system that was, into their process. And even in my own process, I don't want people to try to fit their life into my process. I want them to know how to add, edit, delete, make it their own, and have it be their way, their mastery for living free from their negative attachments. Now, that doesn't mean you remove, you know, steps and things like that, but it's a really effective, an effective piece. So you've got to know how to add, edit, delete, and make it your own, and do it effectively. So that's number 9. And then 10 is to condition any life change. And I've got something very important to share with this one. To condition any new effective behavior, you've got to be willing to acknowledge yourself and the actual action, thought, feeling, emotion, opinion, belief, or whatever it is that's working. Because the more you acknowledge it or have an appropriate reward system, the more you condition it. Because that pathway to those negative, you know, to the way we've been working, is that's paved. That's paved. It's a much easier road.
Can you give us an example of that? Something that is, okay, great.
Yes. So if I know that this particular dietary practice works well for me, and I decide to leave that dietary practice for whatever reason, and then I go, oh, I'm gonna, and I gain weight, right? And then I go try something different to lose the weight, right? And I become on this yo-yo thing like this, right? Because it's crash diet, gain weight, crash diet, gain weight, crash diet, gain weight. We want to condition this one that we know works well for us. And we want to do it in a way that makes it become lifelong, manageable, and maintainable. It's the way I got over anorexia. It's the way for the last 25 years I've been eating disorder in remission. is basically what I call it, because that one can come back at any given time, right? Because we have to eat. We can't just give it up. That's why I love
Yeah.
to talk about food as the example. But it's lifelong, manageable, and maintainable, which means I don't ever feel punished or restricted in the food that I eat, but I also don't have weight fluctuations more than 5 pounds. It's Thanksgiving. I know I'm going to let myself eat the things that don't work well for my body, but I already know what that looks like for me. That looks like through the weekend, and then boom, right back to what works well. Right. And and that for me looks like, 5-6 days a week, I make sure to eat the foods that work well for me, because I have autoimmune, and my systems, require very special attention. But 1 to 2 days a week, I get to do whatever I want, and I know what it's going to look like, feel like, be like. But I also know as soon as I go back in, it's going to level right back out. Right? Like, I choose to have that 1 day of discomfort. I choose not to get up in my head about it and go, oh, I ate terribly on Saturday. Look at me, I'm a fat cow. Right? Like, no, and it's just very seamless. It's very smooth, because I just know that it works. And you can wax and you can wane and you can be flexible in your life. Right? So another one might be, if you and your spouse have had a really good week of communication, there hasn't been a lot of feeling unheard or dismissed, or there hasn't been a lot of dictating and directing or this, and it's because you've been using the power of inquiry. Oh, that power of inquiry, it worked really well this week, right? And then the next week or two, you don't do it. You're not focusing on it. And then you come back and I'm like, well, where's your inquiry? You didn't ask that for a deeper level of understanding. So if it worked well for 1 week, why get rid of it? Right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. Yeah. But so if you're acknowledging what's working well in your life every single day, and why it's working well every single day, and you're looking at how can I capitalize on this and grow it into other areas of my life, it's going to keep going forward. It's going to keep going outward. But if you do it once, it works well, and you just kind of put it aside. Yeah, that worked. I tested that theory. I'm just going to keep it on a shelf over here. And you wait till things get bad again, and then you have to go back. You're in a constant state of fixing instead of creating lifelong, manageable, and maintainable ways of doing things, right?
Yeah. So if anybody wants more help with these 10 steps, like how do we get help from you?
Super easy. All you have to do is go to turningleavesrecovery.com. You can just, there's plenty of forms there, and it's super easy.
Awesome. Awesome. And if we want to connect with you, where can we find you on social media?
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
And you can scroll down to the bottom of this video, and we'll have all Tricia's contact information if anybody wants to work with her further. This has been amazing, awesome. Your story is just so inspiring. And I feel like my viewers are going to get a lot of value from what you shared today. So I thank you so much for being here.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I took like a ton of notes. So, really quick. So you sent me a PDF. So tell us about this PDF, because I'm going to, well, actually, when it comes to YouTube, we can only do links. Well, I'll figure out a way where people can get a hold of this PDF.
They can maybe in the contact form, they can just mention you, and then I can send them. I can send them the PDF.
Perfect.
Because it's not a free download. It requires somebody to have watched me. But in that e-card, there is a link to a free gift, which is my 5-day breathe book.
Yeah.
So they have the free gift. They can get this if they reach out and give me their email address, which is my way of getting getting in touch with people and responding. And then there's a 7-day healthy living journal that pops up when you go on my website. It's a free download also. So
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for saying that. This has been so much fun and so much value. Thank you so much for being here.